This is Readings in Philippine History, Module 1, The Meaning and Relevance of History. This one, we will discuss two sections under this module. Section 1 is the distinction between the primary and secondary sources, and Section 2 is the evaluation of primary and secondary sources. So, let me discuss to you first what is source. Source provides information about a topic. This could be written and non-written. Written, for examples, are books and websites, yet the non-written is photographs and artifacts. No matter what you are doing in history, we need this source in order to know or study the past. There are two kinds of sources from its time of creation. One is the primary source, and second is the secondary source. First, let me discuss to you what is primary source. This is considered as contemporary accounts of an event, personally written or narrated by an individual person who directly experienced or participated in the said event. Primary source tells you about an event that and is from the time of that event. In easier definition, primary source made during the time of the events. There are two primary source are very first-hand, authoritative accounts of events, topics, and historical periods. This is an original information. There are two types of primary source also. The first type of primary source is the published primary sources, written sources that has intentions to be read, like books, magazines, newspapers, advertisement, posters, and maps. Second is the unpublished primary sources. These are written but does not have intentions to be read by everyone or by other people, like letters, diaries, and school reports cards. Another types of primary source are the visual primary sources like images, photographs, films, paintings, cartoons, and posters. And lastly is the artifacts that man-made objects uncovered by the archaeologists, such as pottery, furniture, clothing, and buildings. So that are the four types of primary sources. Um, Primary sources helps you to form your own argument, evaluate unfiltered information from another person's point of view, and critique original work, your own ideas. These are the examples of primary sources: eyewitness testimonies, photographs, voice and video recordings, diaries and journal entries, letters, memoir, journals, speeches, interviews, official records like government publications, minutes, works, reports, artworks, and artifacts, newspapers, and or magazine accounts. So, books also could be considered in the primary source if it means during the time of the event. Second type of source is the secondary sources. This serves as interpretation or readings of primary sources. The author of a piece incorporates his or her personal insights and interpretations, thus detaching the original value of the component of the subject being discussed. Secondary sources tells you about an event but is from a time after the event. Usually talks about the primary sources. And in easier definition, secondary source is made after the time of the events. There are types, secondary sources also interpret, critique, analyze the primary sources. There are types of secondary sources: books, such as school textbooks. Uh, Second is the academic articles written by the university academics. Its audience also are from universities or from the academic. Examples would be journals. And third is websites. The secondary sources are created from the primary sources. So this helps you consider other people's perspectives and strengthen your argument also. But one disadvantage of secondary sources, relying too much on secondary sources may blur out the actual details of particular historical events. So it may lose accuracy and reliability also. So if uh if a person is alive during World War I, and at that time she or he is still a teenager, then kanang nag-write siya a message or a letter or a or something what is happening on that event, it's makonsider siya primary source kay it was that was the time nga he is under those eyewitness testimonies. So that's it. That's about the that is all about also from the section 1. Oh, survey data also is an example of primary sources because it has no analysis and it can make your own conclusion. Wha- While the newspaper or magazines articles are secondary sources because it is a review data that draws conclusion from the primary source. So yeah, let's move on to the secondary sources. Let's move on to section 2, I mean. So this is an evaluation of primary and secondary sources. So in today's generation, the proliferation of fake news is evident in both print and digital media platforms. So it becomes more apparent that sources of text should be scrutinized for their credibility. There are ways on how to know if the sources are legit, accurate, or it is credible. Under Gilbert Garaghan and John de Langles identified 6 points of inquiries to evaluate the authenticity of the primary source. First is the date. When was it produced? Second is the localization. Where did it originate? Third is the authorship. Who wrote it? Fourth is the analysis. What pre-existing material serves as the basis for its production? And fifth is the integrity. What was its original for? And lastly, the credibility. What is the evidential value of its content? So the absence of these primary documents that can attest to the accuracy of any historical claim is really a problem in the extensive study of history. So kung wala siya kung wala ay, mga information sa primary sources under these 6 kabuok na mga points, it means na it's not accurate. And secondary sources are readily available in print and digital. Historical events are narratives commonly passed on from one generation to the next or knowledge that is shared within the community. That's why the disadvantage of secondary sources is it's passed generation to generation and malos na ang iyahang accuracy and credibility. So secondary sources materials in the study of Philippine history is without conjectures and refutations have the capacity to fill in gaps caused by the lack of the absence of primary sources. Another person who want to emphasize that is it possible to source to avoid using secondary sources due to difficulty in accessing primary source is Louis Gottschalk. He suggested that the secondary sources must only be used for deriving the setting wherein the contemporary evidence will fit in the grand narrative of history. Second, getting leads to their bibliography data. Third is acquiring quotations or citations from the contemporary or other sources. And fourth is deriving interpretations with a view of testing and improving them, but not accepting them as outright truth. Historians should be prepared to verify the information provided by secondary sources. Louis Gottschalk is a American historian. He's also a professor at University of Chicago. And also two persons, Martha Howell and Walter Prevenier. Um, They have stated that before any source can be considered as evidence in an historical argument, it must satisfy three preconditions. This could be first, it must be comprehensible at the most basic level of vocabulary, language, and handwriting. So, the first precondition sets the ground for the contentions on the acceptability of the source and for all the aspects of the debate. And second is the source must be carefully located in accordance with place and time. So it must have author or composer or writer, and the location where it was produced, published should be noted for checking of authenticity and accuracy. So it has date and place. That is really important. And third is the through the first two preconditions, the authenticity of the source must always be checked and counter-checked before being accepted as a credible source in any historical findings. For more information about Martha Howell and Walter Prevenier, they have books that is entitled "From Reliable Sources: An Introduction to Historical Methods." They also evaluate in terms of internal criteria, which include 7 factors. The genealogy of the document. This refers to the development of the document. The document may be original, a copy, or a copy of the copy. Second is the genesis of the document, includes the situation and the authorities during the document's production. Third, the originality of the document includes the nature of the document, whether it is an eye or ear witness account or merely passing of existing information. Fourth is the interpretation of the document pertains to deducing meaning from the document. Fifth, the authorial authority of the document refers to the relationship between the document subjects, matter, and its author. Sixth is the competence of the observer. This refers to the author's capabilities and qualifications to critically comprehend and report information. And seven is trustworthiness of the observer. Refers to the author's integrity, whether he or she fabricates or reports truthfully. So the reliability of primary sources is assessed on how these sources are directly related and closely connected to the time of the events they pertain to, while the reliability of the secondary sources depends on the elapsed time from the date of the event to the date of their creation. So for those who engage in historical research have the opportunity to exhaust all available materials in order to come up with the extensive outputs. So no matter where sources you've got, if it's primary or secondary, give credits to the authors or to those who made these uh, papers or researches that you want to do, because for para wala siya'y plagiarism sa ina nga case. So that would be all for module 1, and thank you. Have a great day. Keep safe.